Good morning, everyone, and thank you for attending our webinar on this snowy morning. We hope that you're all safe and warm. We're going to jump right in since we've got a lot to cover. You've already been told that you're on mute. However, if you do have some questions, just please go ahead and put them in the chat area of the webinar, and we'll take it from there. So today our webinar will focus on a high-level review of some of the new features in 7.4, some of the enhancements in the assignments and workflow, security and permissioning, reporting, new user experience, and interface improvements in the areas of context-sensitive help. So additionally, we will then take a quick look at the new web viewer. By the way, the new web viewer is now considered the primary web viewer. But if you have feelings of nostalgia about the previous web viewer, you can always set your user preferences to use the old viewer. It's listed in your preferences as previous layout. But we think that once you see the new viewer, you probably won't want to change it. So, and then finally, FILEBOUND has updated their community website as well for clients and end users with new postings for documentation. So if you aren't already a member of the FILEBOUND community, let us know, and we'll work with you to help get you connected. So very quickly, this is our agenda for today's webinar. From version 7.4.4 through 7.46. There have been a lot of changes and features added to FILEBOUND. Since version 7.46 was purposefully light on features and strong on stability, we thought that covering the impactful features from the most recent versions would be beneficial. So also, as a follow-up to this webinar, we are going to be presenting a webinar specifically focused on the FILEBOUND Connect product, along with custom development and third-party integrations. So that date will be coming soon. So let's dive right in with some of the seemingly smaller yet high-impact enhancements, as they are features that you'll be using every day. Let's start with search. With the project type filtering enabled, the search screen will now automatically remember the last project that you searched for, or and project type that you searched for. This allows us to basically, you can pick up where you left off per se. Also, using the project type filter allows you to see a subset of the projects to choose from, rather than a long list of projects from the various departments that and applications that you might be secured for. If you have your project set for full text searching, there's another feature that's really nice. And just like the previous versions, you can use the tilde in front of your search terms to perform more precise full text searches. You can enter that manually, or now you can let the FILEBOUND add it automatically with the use of the new search string builder. As new information is entered into the search string builder, a preview is displayed, showing the user how the search string is being built. As a result, you can easily build a complex search string by using the options window to combine near, or, and search parameters. On the user setup side, administrators needed a way to collect and leverage more data about the users for purposes of security and workflow routing. So the addition of the 6 new user data fields will allow system administrators, user administrators, and workflow designers to access and leverage the data to help increase both the security and automation. Currently, these fields are accessible through custom scripting in PowerShell. However, in upcoming versions, these fields will become available through various configuration points within FILEBOUND. As we mentioned earlier, FILEBOUND can be configured to allow projects to be grouped. For example, all projects in AP can be grouped as accounts payable, or HR projects can be grouped as human resources. This allows users to filter their available projects to limit their choices, to make it faster to access the various projects, that they are secured for in FileBound. In the past, entering the information into related fields link required the users to click on an option on the viewer called related files. However, this wasn't really very intuitive. For example, for AP, that might represent GL line item entries, or for HR, it might represent classifications or certifications. With the newest release of FileBound, users can actually now name the related files tab using a name that makes sense for that project instead of something very generic. For AP, it can now be named line items or GL entries. For HR, it can now be named certifications. So it's just very handy and intuitive. On the security and access side of the house, FileBound has added a number of features and configuration options. First, FileBound has added a group administrator. The group administrator is a user who is able to manage group settings and user access. However, they cannot create users or add project access to a group. Now, group administrators combined with access administrators, project administrators, and overall system administrators will actually complete the suite of provisioning levels, which will then help to ensure that users are provided with the tools needed to remain compliant with their security and their access audits. For the same reason, FileBound has also added a group permissions, which can be set to show separators and dividers as read-only. And then finally, FileBound has created index-level auditing that monitors any adds or edits to an index field, including who made the change and then the previous and resulting values for that field. So the amount of information available has increased dramatically. In addition, administrators also needed a way to break out a user's annotations permissions in a more granular way. So specifically, they wanted to restrict users to only be able to edit their own annotations. Administrators can now configure their systems to better restrict access and editability, allowing them to better match their internal protocols, for example. And then in addition, the new help text gives administrators more of an insight into the impact that each configuration has on various users and group access. You will see more on the help near the end of our presentation. FileBound is also giving administrators more granular rights when it comes to document file locking. They've added 2 new locking rights and the ability to not only turn these permissions on at the project level, but to assign the rights at the group level. This allows administrators to select specific users to have locking rights, rather than everyone that has permissions to view the project, as with previous versions. Lastly, from a security and permissioning perspective, administrators can now configure security to enforce it in either a most restrictive or least restrictive standing. Currently, the FileBound system defaults to the least restrictive setting, where if the same user belongs to groups with conflicting project rights, that user is granted the least restrictive set of rights, as is shown in the example we have here for you. The alternative permissions is to set the security at the most restrictive level. This setting will most often result in a user having fewer rights to the projects that they're assigned to. So the decision is now something that the administrator can make quite easily. By the way, this feature we feel is a must-have for those clients working to adhere to their comprehensive security and audit processes. And this selection is set at the system-wide level. So just keep that in mind. On the reporting side, the user rights report is now more comprehensive, allowing the user to compile all projects, all groups, and all users into a single list. Alternatively, the workflow status report can pull and analyze information on a specific set of users rather than the all or one approach from the previous versions. Additionally, since FILEBOUND added the ability to lock files, they've introduced the locked files report. System and project administrators both can unlock any locked documents either via the viewer or the report itself. And finally, the Insights dashboard now offers filtered dropdowns and easy to recognize field names, and that's also in an effort to provide greater usability. Okay, so that wraps up the general features that cross a number of different areas in FILEBOUND. These next sections will cover the tools that you should be or will be using every day, specifically dealing with electronic forms, workflow, the long-awaited web viewer, and finally a quick discussion on the new FILEBOUND help system. Since its introduction in the first release of version 7X, the eForms module has continued to evolve and improve. Because of this, there are so many additions and improvements that we couldn't cover them all in this webinar. So to cover as much as we can, we've listed a number of bulleted items of note. Items such as undoing or undo, sizing controls, different table features, forms controls, and field mappings. However, we have decided to focus on 3 particularly impactful eForm features that we believe you will be very excited about. The first of which is the ability to create data lookups for forms that will update form fields based on a field match with an existing FILEBOUND project. So, for example, you may have a form that contains several fields for vendor information, and you have a vendor project file that stores that information. You can use the vendor project as a lookup project and have your form fields such as vendor name, contact name, address, manager, account number automatically populate when the vendor ID is entered on the form and then matches the vendor ID in the vendor project. So I'm sure that you can see that the possibilities are really great when it comes to being able to fill out electronic forms using and leveraging existing data. With 7.4 and its enhancements to the forms designer, users are able to set rules and conditions for when specific elements like drop-downs, text boxes, whether items can appear, whether you want them to disappear, when you want them to be enabled or disabled. For example, your system administrator might be designing a form for an employment application within your FILEBOUND site. Okay, in it, they want the application form to prompt the user for the school or university name and the type of degree that was obtained, but only if they first indicate that they graduated from college. So if they indicate that they did graduate, the entry fields would appear on the form. Otherwise, they simply would not appear to the user. Now, one of the benefits of this type of feature is that it directs users through the form, displaying only the sections that are applicable to them. This feature allows admins to hide or show, enable, or disable field options based on input requirements. Also, with the release of 7.4, users can create PDF forms simply by loading them in the Forms Designer. Now, let's just think about that for a moment. Think about all the PDF forms that you're using in your daily business. Think about the departments in your organization that rely on these forms, and yet they lack an efficient storage and organizational tool, one with a comprehensive workflow and an integrated tool set like DocuSign for integrated electronic signatures. If your departments are currently using FILEBOUND, imagine the impact that this feature will have. And if they aren't using it, then perhaps they should start taking a look at it, because the impact for them would be significant. Wonderful. So on the workflow side of the house, there are a few really nice changes and options that continue to add to FILEBOUND'S amazing workflow tool set. First, while in the primary user interface, users will see a more organized display of their workflow assignments. This list is alphabetized, and users that are revisiting the page will automatically be taken to the last active route that they were in. Now, this is particularly valuable to users that participate in a number of workflows, but perhaps one that more than the others. Okay, so being taken directly to that last route speeds their access, increases their workflow efficiency and their throughput. Additionally, and just about as exciting a change is that FILEBOUND is now rolling all variations of the same process under a single parent process. So therefore, by selecting the parent, the users can act on any of the items in any of the processes, or they can select a single sub-process and just address those items. So again, very organized, much easier to work for the end users. Another exciting feature available at the enterprise level now is the ability to use the workflow summary email option to alert users. They'll do that on a scheduled basis of workflow items that need their attention. So now, instead of being sent emails each time an item enters a user's queue, all the participants can be notified on a group summary basis. This in turn reduces the number of emails they receive in a given day and further enhances their user experience. In the workflow, the new file export stencil can be used. Now, this is being used and can be used by premise-based, basically in-house licensed customers. And they can, at any point within the workflow, export to a local folder. So that's why it needs to be premise-based, in-house licensed. Administrators can configure the stencil to include only the file data, only the images, or a combination of the two. And then finally, a handful of additional features that are of note here. PDFs and converted TIFFs can now be used as routed items in the new versions. The exception step user, which used to be blank unless you assigned it, will now be set as the system administrator by default. So you'll always have an exception step user to refer to for your workflows. Administrators can choose to turn off emails for ad hoc routes if you use ad hoc routing. And then finally, workflow notes are defaulted to off as opposed to defaulted to on like the previous versions, and can then be activated when needed. So finally, within the context of workflow and how it's presented in the new web viewer, you will notice that all workflow step data, comments, and other options are presented in a workflow panel on the right side of the viewer. This preserves the center of the screen for the image, as well as any related document data or files, related files. When the workflow step has been completed, the nice thing is that the viewer will automatically hide the workflow pane until the user is in a document, again, that has a workflow step waiting for them. So speaking of the new web viewer and the positive impact that it will make to the user experience, let's take a more detailed look at the viewer and show you some of the features that will have a lot of impact on how you will access your documents, data, and the processes. So this is the new FILEBOUND web viewer. FILEBOUND has been working hard to improve the visual quality, the user experience, performance, and they've worked hard to eliminate the resource overhead or their technical debt associated with their viewer. So let me give you a quick tour. This is the full user interface for the new web viewer. And as you can see, the navigation has been moved to the top and sides to allow for more space to view the content. Commonly used tools have been moved to the right side, and the left side panel has been split to offer a better, more comprehensive layout. Additionally, when the user leaves the viewer, the layout will be retained so that future retrievals will display as the user intends, including the height of the various panes. For example, look over on the side and you'll see the file details pane on the left. That height will be retained until changed. The pages will default to 3/4 display and will retain any zoom settings as the user navigates through the documents. And then by request, all the action buttons have been anchored so that they're easy to find and always accessible. So, no more having to scroll to the bottom of your index data to find the save button. Pretty cool, right? The related content has also been regrouped into the same panel for easy access. Here you see that all the information pertaining to a document is listed together in an easy to read format. And then FILEBOUND has added some document-specific information in the form of icons on both the left and the right side of the documents. This will improve the user's experience by letting them know what kind of document is stored and whether or not it is active or archived, whether it's participating in a workflow, whether it's locked for security or use purposes, or maybe it's been declared for records management. Coloring has also been added to the web viewer to indicate when an index field has been modified but not yet saved. And then once it's saved, the colors return to normal. Also, an Open Files button has been added to the Related Documents panel, which allows users to open a group of selected related documents in a new browser tab. So now they'll be able to see the documents associated with the file as well as the related documents very easily. Finally, FILEBOUND has added the ability to split the screen to provide visual access to a second document. Now, this can be quite powerful when the information on the document is being used to make decisions and processes such as workflows, or to simply compare one document to another. Even if you have more than 2 documents in the file tree, you can continue to swap images between the 2 frames by clicking on the frame and then on the document itself in the tree. Finally, we want to touch on another area that FILEBOUND has been investing in heavily based on the feedback from the Net Promoter Score, surveys, and feedback from both customers and integrators like us. In the survey, one of the most consistently mentioned topics had to do with FILEBOUND's help and documentation resources. FILEBOUND knew that if they wanted to deliver in this area, that they had to change their platform and create a better structure to provide more comprehensive data. They spent the past several months transitioning their systems and their documentation to Madcap's Flare product. Now, this is one of the industry's leading help and documentation platforms and is used by companies like Microsoft, Barclays, Lockheed Martin, McKesson, and more. With the release of 7.4, you will see the new help site, FILEBOUND's phase 1 approach to providing more comprehensive information when you need it. The site is easy to navigate and structured in a similar manner to FILEBOUND's product itself, providing users a more intuitive way to find data that pertains to most of their situation. So being context-centric, clicking on the help button in FILEBOUND will take you to a help page specific to that area or screen that you're on in FILEBOUND. So moving to Madcap's platform also opens doors for FILEBOUND to create more comprehensive user guides, download PDFs, and even incorporate media like video. A lot has changed from 7.4.4 through 7.4.6, and we're very excited about the possibilities that this new platform brings to offering more comprehensive resources and solutions in the future. So as you can see, the new help resources, along with many other features that we've covered today, are great opportunities to further engage with other departments and teams in your organization to leverage your current investment and create meaningful conversations that will expand your usage of FILEBOUND. So with that, I will open the floor for any questions. Oh, by the way, if we can't get to all your questions today because of time, we will provide an email to answer each question. We've also recorded this webinar, and we'll make the slide deck available to all attendees. So Jack and Chuck, are there any questions for me?
Hey, Bill, a couple. One was someone asked if the slide deck will be made available afterwards, and there's some bullets that you went through pretty quick.
Yes, absolutely. Yes, and that's why we're making the slide deck available. Those bullets on the eForms Designer, I just couldn't spend a lot of time on because of our time constraints. So absolutely, Jack will be sending that out to everyone that attended and anyone who needs it for further reference.
And there's another question in regards to the new web viewer, whether or not it would be available and to use to debug. I think what they're looking to do is to be able to debug it without having it be the default viewer.
Certainly. Well, I kind of joked a little bit at the beginning that if they had any romantic remembrances of the old web viewer, they can set that back. They can choose to have the previous web viewer, which is now called the new layout, or the old layout, previous layout. So they can go there and they can make that. They can also use for currently the Windows viewer, and then they can jump back and forth between the previous layout of the web viewer and the new web viewer as well. And that's all done within the each user's configuration preferences.
And Bill, here's another
hey, Bill,
one.
Go ahead, Chuck.
Sorry, Chuck. Can eForm load data from an external data source?
To an extent, it can. One of the things that we're testing are things where we're going to be reaching out with specific HTML queries, whether it's jQueries or some other process by which we can read from external databases. Currently, by default and by design within the eForms Designer, we can link directly to FILEBOUND projects, and we're working on understanding what the limitations are within the eForms Designer to reach out to external databases as well.
Here's another one for you. Will the old web viewer go away entirely? And is there a timeline for that if that's the case?
Yes, it will. Currently, the timeline with FILEBOUND is when FILEBOUND releases a 7.5, which is slated for sometime in April or March. The plan is that the new web viewer will be the only web viewer, and that the previous web viewer will go away. Yep. Chuck, did you have a question at one point?
Nope, Jack covered it.
Great.
And then another one, will the Windows viewer go away?
Currently, we have not had any information shared with us as far as a definitive yes and a timeline. I know that from a strategic perspective, that FILEBOUND does want to eventually eliminate their use of the full Windows viewer because of the technical overhead associated with it and the ever-growing adoption of web technology. So what will determine that will be the ability to have the new web viewer that we've shown today be able to accomplish everything that we need that we currently might be using the current Windows viewer for. So when that occurs, they will determine a schedule, a sunset date, and roll that out informationally to us and to all of the customers.
And Bill, we're pushing our time right now. There's a couple other questions. We will follow up directly with those people. Also want to let you know that we did record this, so this will be made available to you, and we'll get you a link to that recording along with the PowerPoint deck as well.
Great, thanks, Jack. Yeah, and as I put here on our last slide, thanks. Thanks for attending. We hope that you found this to be informational. We're very excited to bring you this new release of FILEBOUND and all of the features that it includes. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, either to our sales team or to our support team for the details and the assistance. Thank you all, and have a wonderful rest of your day.